Well, many people have asked me for a study plan. And so I created a study plan that's about 8 weeks because our dedicated at the University of Nevada, Reno is about 8 weeks. And so for it, I created 4 different phases. Each phase is about 2 weeks. And if you complete it within that time, then you move on to the next phase. If you don't complete all the stuff that you need to do, then you could extend those phases out. But this is a ballpark. So 8 week plan, and we'll get after it. And one of the reasons why I created an 8 week plan is because one of the things I didn't like with dedicated compared to regular medical school is that everything in medical school is centered around them partitioning out your time, right? Your time is not your own. Your schedule isn't your own. And so you're showing up and you're doing the things that they tell you to do. Once we get to dedicated, all that structure is gone, completely gone. And it's like that overnight, quite literally, right? And so they're like, oh yeah, you get 8 weeks. As long as you pass your exam, report back in 8 weeks or whatever. They don't tell you what to start with first. They don't tell you what things to prioritize. They don't tell you how to manage all your time. They're just like, hey, watch out for this. And then good luck. And I'm just like, dude, that's not helpful at all. And I saw this very much the same way when I finished playing football, where it's like, sports with a little bit of school. And then after that, nothing. If you don't make it to the league, tough cookie, right? And so I developed this 8 week plan just to address some of the pain points that I had and that I know other people have, and to also just sort of mitigate some of the anxieties. So it's like you don't have to follow it to a T, but I would highly suggest it, mainly as a starting point, because this gives you a good baseline for how to set up a schedule and address some of the things that will probably get in the way of you actually doing well on a day-to-day basis. And so it's an 8 week plan split up into 4 phases. Each phase has about 2 weeks to it. And pretty much when you go from one phase to the next, it's because you completed all the tasks for that day, every single day. So phase 1, it's weeks 1 to 2. The goal in this phase is to build a solid foundation on how to approach and answer questions efficiently, and build consistency in your study routine. This is where you just dust off all the kinks, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. The sooner you get through phase 1, the sooner you can move on to phase 2. And so some of the goals with phase 1 is to get through the left side of UWorld, one pass of all the questions, regardless of if you did them or not, and regardless of if you get them right or not. You want to read through all the Anki 1000 rapid review documents that I provide. This is about 70 to 80% of all the stuff that you're probably going to need to know for the exam anyway. And the rest comes from just practice questions. And finally, you want to get through every Anki card in the Anki 1000 deck, from blue to red. This constitutes one pass through all the cards in the whole deck. And there's only about 2,200 cards in it, right? And so the suggested methods that I have for you for phase 1 is try to get up to 80 questions. And if you could do 80 to 100 questions a day in UWorld and spend no more than 2 minutes per question answering it and about 90 seconds per question just reviewing it, if you could get to that, you're doing really good. For all the wrong answers, write down 1 to 2 lines answering what is the information I needed to know to get the question right in 90 seconds. These are pretty much your study notes or your crib sheets for reviewing before bed and the first thing that you wake up. And then cap your study days at about 12 hours and for 6 days. So you don't want to do more than 12 hours, and you don't want to study every single day. You want to take a day off, and that day off is just centered around just like reviewing the stuff that you did the previous days before, or just that week, and only for a couple hours. And so in terms of the study blocks or the sequence for phase 1, which is the left side of UWorld, the systems and also the high yield stuff, you start off with doing all the subjects and the systems for general principles. And so that's about 256 questions. And then from there, you do all the biochem subject questions, and that's about 156. Then all the genetics questions, which is 106. All the histology questions, which is about 29. Then all the biostats questions, which is about 121. All the immunology questions, which is about 131. All the embryology questions, which is about 74. And then you're going to do all the subjects for the communications systems. So social sciences communications only, and that's 107. And then you're going to do all the behavioral sciences subjects, and it's just going to be focused on psych. So it's about 179. And then the last three are going to be all your multi-systems for all the subjects, which is 29 questions. And then for all the subjects, you're going to do all the reproductive, male and female reproductive, which is 52 for male reproductive and 79 for female reproductive. And then you're going to do all the dermatology questions for all the systems, which is about 100. What I did is I tried to crank out as many of these questions as possible and figure out how many I can do in a day. And this was able to allow me to, one, get my feet wet pretty quickly, and also have a good baseline in terms of building up my stamina for doing questions. Because the goal was to get to that 80 to 100 questions a day. And so if I did more and then I teetered back, then on average, I was getting that 100, 80 to 100 a day. Phase 2, which is weeks 3 to 4. So now that you have all the quote unquote high yield stuff under your belt, it's time to build on the foundation towards mastery. Not mastery of the content, but mastery of how to approach the types of questions you'll likely encounter on STEP based on their published exam content distribution by USMLE. And so my suggestions are, scoring in the 50% on average with the question blocks for that day. Not individually, but on average, doing out of all the questions that you did, scoring above a 50%. And then again, having that 80 to 100 questions per day as with the suggested blocks. And then you want to average about 300 to 500 Anki cards a day from the rapid review stuff. And then you want to cap your studying at around 10 to 12 hours and do that for about 5 days. And then you want to do at least one half day, right? So 4 to 5 hours focusing on reviewing. And then you want to do another day, and that day is just going to be your day off. And it's pretty much like you did for phase 1, where you're just light review of the previous day stuff. And then you also want to take a practice exam at the end of this phase. And so the suggested blocks are, 10 to 20 questions of each. Never do 40 question blocks ever, but doing 10 to 20 questions each of either all the subjects or all the pathology for general principles and multisystems as your block 1. Again, we're doing about 10 questions. And then the 4 P's, so pathophysiology, pathology, physiology, and pharmacology for endocrine, reproductive, hematology, oncology, and neuro. That's block 2. Then you're only going to do behavioral sciences, and it's going to be the psych and the behavioral health with all the social sciences without communications. So behavioral health and social sciences without communications, and that's block 3. Then you're going to do all the subjects, and you're going to do biostats and communications only for block 4. Then you're doing biochemistry, immunology, histology, pathology, pathophysiology, and physiology as the subjects for biochemistry, immunology, and cell bio. And that's block 5. Then we're going to do our 4 Ps again, and that's going to be for cardiology, renal, pulmonary, and GI for block 6. Genetics, microbiology, embryology, and anatomy for our subjects. And we're going to do all the questions in the systems for that. And that's block 7. Biochemistry, pharmacology, physiology, and microbiology for the subjects. And we're going to select all the systems for block 8. And again, we're doing 10 questions. If you're feeling fancy and you want to do a little bit more, then you could do no more than 20 for that block, but we're not doing more than 20. If it's too much for you, then you could drop it down to below 10, but we want to hit that 80 questions. And the goal is to get a 50% average on all 8 blocks combined. So say you get block 1, you do 70%, block 2, you do a 20%, block 3, you do 30%, so on and so forth. You want to average those at the end. Phase 3, that's pretty much weeks 5 to 6. And so our goal with this phase is to prioritize reviewing what you know and what you don't know. By this time, you're already reviewing thousands of cards, and you probably have a book full of 90-second info on what you needed to know to get the question right in 90 seconds. And you're reading that every morning and every evening. Let's continue to build on that so that you know everything like the back of your hand. This is the point that you feel probably burnout is probably creeping up on you. And we also want to balance your studying with intentional breaks and self care, right? You want to lean into your hobbies, lean into the Pomodoro method, and use these tools and these resources to get you through. And so a metric of success is we want to be scoring in the 70 range on average with our question blocks for that day. So not individually, but average blocks for that day. So we're looking at our blocks as what did we do on that day and how successful were we? And so again, we want to be in the 80 to 100 questions per day range on the suggested blocks. And we want to bump up our average for cards per day to around 700. And again, you want to cap your studying at around 9 at the lowest and 12 at the highest. And we want to be focusing on getting a solid 4 to 5 days in. And then you want to do at least 1 to 2 half days, so 4 to 5 hours, just focusing on reviewing and starting to take a practice test just about every week. And so that's why we're spending less days doing our regular studying, because we want to add in a practice exam. My day was Sunday where I did the practice exam, and then Monday would be when I started to review. And then obviously you're going to take a day off and you're going to have that light review like you normally did in the previous phases. And so that's really it. Things are really starting to ramp up here. And so the suggested blocks that I would say for you to do, and you could always tailor this, is an evolution of the previous suggested blocks for phase 2, right? So we're looking at, again, 10 to 20 questions each block over 8 blocks. And you never want to do 40 question blocks. It's not representative. You're setting yourself up. You're not setting yourself up for success. And so with it, we'll start with our suggested blocks or suggested subjects of just doing all the subjects. So selecting all the subjects. And then we're doing general principles, multi-systems, and poisoning. And that's block 1. We have our 4 Ps again. That's cardio, pulmonary, and renal for block 2. 4 Ps for GI, endocrine, reproductive. And that's male and female reproductive, as well as pregnancy. And that's block 3. We're going to do all the subjects for neuro, hematology, oncology, and rheumatology for block 4. The behavioral sciences subject is only selected, and we're doing all the psychiatric and behavioral sciences and social sciences except for communications. And that's block 5. Then we're going to select all the subjects, and we're going to do biostats and communications only in the social sciences for block 6. Microbiology and histology for the subjects, and we're doing all the systems for block 7. And we're doing biochemistry and immunology for all the subjects, and we're doing all the systems. So we're going to do biochemistry and immunology as the subjects and all the systems for block 8. And again, the goal is to get to that 70% average for your daily 8 blocks that you're doing. And we're doing 10, no more than 20 questions. And the goal is to stay around that 80 to 100 question range for each day. Phase 4. So this is the final stretch. And this is typically week 7 to 8. And this is pretty much how we gauge how ready we are. Scoring consistently high in all the suggested question blocks for that day for the last 2 weeks going into the exam is what we're looking for. You want to be scoring high on daily blocks to offset whatever practice exam scores you get. All right, so at the end of the day, practice exams are not really representative of the real thing because the content distribution is off by miles. Therefore, your confidence is built from the daily wins and not the weekly anomalies. And so ideally, we want to be scoring in the 80s on average for our blocks for that day. Not individually, but on average for that day. And again, we want to be in that 80 to 100 practice question range. And on average for our cards, we want to be doing 800 to 1,000 cards per day. And so we're really flexing those muscles now. And so you want to cap your studying at no more than 10 hours. I would say 8 to 10 hours. And you want to be doing that for about 4 to 5 days. And then you want to do probably 1 to 2 half days. So 3 to 4 hours focusing on just reviewing. And the goal is to take a practice exam every week. And it's only 2 weeks. So you're going to be taking a practice exam pretty much every week, every month leading up to it after you get past phase 2. And then, you could squeeze a day off here and there. But for the most part, we're going into the thick of it. And so a good checklist that I would recommend is stretch and recite a daily mantra every single day. Do crib sheets from the previous day for 30 minutes to an hour. Review your Anki Rapper review charts that I created for about 30 minutes to an hour. And it's just a leisurely review of it. Do 80 to 100 questions based on the blocks that I suggested, and make crib sheets, which are just 1 to 2 line answers, knowing all the information you need to know to get the question right in 90 seconds. Then we're going to do 500 to 1,000 Anki cards from the Anki decks and integrate your own Anki cards into that based on your crib sheets from your actual practice. And if it's hard to get 500 to 1,000, then start with just 200 to 300 and build your way up every week. Review the crib sheets from this day for 30 minutes to an hour. Then, take a break every 45 to 60 minutes. And that's where the Pomodoro comes in. Obviously, don't skip meals and don't overload on caffeine. Try to eat 3 meals a day, especially at the same times. Have a snack in between meals and also stay hydrated, right? 6 to 8 cups of water. Try not to do too much, right? But indulge in your hobbies. Get 6 to 8 hours of sleep each night. Do the things that will help you get through the day and get through this whole process. Thanks for checking this out. This is USMLE Step 1000, created by me, Stephen Christian, a space where you can turn your Step 1 prep into something smarter, sustainable, and stress-free. If you found this helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. You can follow us on Spotify for more study tips and more audio podcast stuff, Instagram at USMLE Step 1000, and you can like the Facebook page to stay connected. Don't forget to download all the resources, all the Anki decks, the clinical clues, everything from the PDFs and everything that you saw in the videos you can find at www.step1000.com. And follow the blog for more updates as well at www.usmlestep1000.com, your one-stop shop for everything Step 1000. And if you like what I'm doing here and you want to follow or at least support, you can check me out on social media at Stuck on an Island. Thanks again, and I look forward to sharing more stuff about Step 1 prep and how to overcome these mental hurdles so that you can have the best possible experience possible. So again, I'm not going to hold you any longer, but remember, let's keep pushing forward, one step at a time, to 1,000.